Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Harry Potter fans everywhere. As many of you already know, my name is Zach Jones. Welcome back to my channel, but if you're new to my channel, then welcome. Now, probably wondering why I've got Dumbledore's wand. Well, it's mainly down to the fact that I'm going to be doing some reading from a few chapters from this, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. But first I'm going to show you all my Potter knowledge. And not many people know that the Elder Wand, also known as Death Stick and the Wand of Destiny, is made of elder wood with a thestral tail hair and is precisely 15 inches long. And of course, it's unknown if it was really given to Antioch Peveril, the eldest of the three brothers, by death, or if he created it himself. No one really knows. But, of course, as I said, I'm going to be doing a bit of reading from a few chapters in this book, in the final of the Harry Potter books. Now, by that, I'm going to be reading things like from Rita Skeeter, but also from Elphias Doge, and I'm going to start there now. Are you all sitting comfortably? Very good. Have you all got a drink and something to eat? Okay, but if you have, then good. If you haven't, then not. Have you all been to the bathroom? Very good. Right. Now, sit back, relax, and get ready. Albus Dumbledore Remembered by Elphias Doge. I first met Albus Dumbledore at the age of 11 on my first day at Hogwarts. Our mutual attraction was undoubtedly due to the fact that we both felt ourselves to be outsiders. I had contracted dragonpox shortly before arriving at school, and while I was no longer contagious, my pock-marked visage and greenish hue did not encourage many to approach me. For his part, Albus had arrived at Hogwarts under the burden of an unwanted notoriety. Scarcely a year previously, his father, Percival, had been convicted of a savage and well-publicised attack upon 3 young muggles. Albus never denied that his father, who was to die in Azkaban, had committed this crime. On the contrary, when I plucked up the courage to ask him, he assured me that he knew his father to be guilty. Beyond that, Dumbledore refused to speak of the sad business, though many attempted to make him do so. Some, indeed, were disposed to praise his father's action, and assume that Albus, too, was a Muggle-hater. They could not have been more mistaken, as anybody who knew Albus would attest he never revealed the remotest anti-Muggle tendency. Indeed, his determined support for Muggle rights gained him many enemies in subsequent years. In a matter of months, however, Albus's own fame had begun to eclipse that of his father. By the end of his first year, he would never again be known as the son of a Muggle-hater, but as nothing more or less than the most brilliant student ever seen at the school. Those of us who were privileged to be his friends benefited from his example, not to mention his help and encouragement, with which he was always generous. He confessed to me in later life that he knew, even then, that his greatest pleasure lay in teaching. He not only won every prize of note that the school offered, he was soon in regular correspondence with the most notable magical names of the day, including Nicholas Flamel, the celebrated alchemist, Bathilda Bagshot, the noted historian, and Adalbert Waffling, the magical theoretician. Several of his papers found their way into learned publications such as Transfiguration Today, Challenges in Charming, and The Practitional Potioneer. Albus's future career seemed likely to be meteoric, and the only question that remained was when he would become Minister for Magic, though it was often predicted in later years that he was on the point of taking the job. However, he never had ministerial ambitions. 3 years after we had started at Hogwarts, Albus's brother, Aberforth, arrived at the school. They were not alike. Aberforth was never bookish and, unlike Albus, preferred to settle arguments by duelling rather than through reasoned discussion. However, it is quite wrong to suggest, as some have, that the brothers were not friends. They rubbed along as comfortably as two such different boys could do. In fairness to Aberforth, it must be admitted that living in Albus's shadow cannot have been an altogether comfortable experience. Being continually outshone was an uncomfortable hazard of being his friend, and cannot have been any more pleasurable than as a brother. When Albus and I left Hogwarts, we intended to take the then traditional tour of the world together, visiting and observing foreign wizards before pursuing our separate careers. However, tragedy intervened. On the very eve of our trip, Albus's mother, Kendra, died, leaving Albus the head and sole breadwinner of the family. I postponed my departure long enough to pay my respects at Kendra's funeral, then left for what was now to be a solitary journey. With a younger brother and sister to care for, and little gold left to them, there could no longer be any question of Albus accompanying me. That was the period of our lives when we had least contact. I wrote to Albus, describing, perhaps insensitively, the wonders of my journey from narrow escapes from chimeras in Greece to the experiments of Egyptian alchemists. His letters told me little of his day-to-day life, which I guessed to be frustratingly dull for such a brilliant wizard. Immersed in my own experiences, it was with horror that I heard, towards the end of my year's travels, that yet another tragedy had struck the Dumbledores: the death of his sister, Ariana. Though Ariana had been in poor health for a long time, the blow coming so soon after the loss of their mother had a profound effect on both of her brothers. All those closest to Albus, and I count myself to be one of that lucky number, agree that Ariana's death and Albus's feelings of personal responsibility for it, though of course he was guiltless, left their mark upon him forevermore. I returned home to find a young man who had experienced a much older person's suffering. Albus was more reserved than before, and much less light-hearted. To add to his misery, the loss of Ariana had led not to a renewed closeness between Albus and Aberforth, but an estrangement. In time this would lift. In later years they re-established, if not a close relationship, then certainly a cordial one. However, he rarely spoke of his parents or of Ariana from then on, and his friends learned not to mention them. Other quills will describe the triumphs of the following years, Dumbledore's innumerable contributions to the store of wizarding knowledge, including his discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, will benefit generations to come, as will the wisdom he displayed in the many judgments he made while chief warlock of the Wizengamot. They say still that no wizarding duel ever matched that between Dumbledore and Grindelwald in 1945. Those who witnessed it have written of the terror and the awe that they felt as they watched these two extraordinary wizards do battle. Dumbledore's triumph and its consequences for the wizarding world are considered a turning point in magical history to match the introduction of the International Statute of Secrecy and the downfall of he who must not be named. Albus Dumbledore was never proud or vain. He could find something to value in anyone, however apparently insignificant or wretched, and I believe that his early losses endowed him with great humanity and sympathy. I shall miss his friendship more than I can say, but my loss is as nothing compared to the wizarding world's. That he was the most inspiring and best loved of all Hogwarts headmasters cannot be in question. He died as he lived, working always for the greater good, and, to his last hour, was willing to stretch out a hand to a small boy with dragon pox, as he was on the day that I met him. Oh. Elphias Doge really did care about Dumbledore, didn't he? But, unfortunately, there aren't very many who cared that much about Dumbledore, as you will see in Rita Skeeter's article of For the Greater Good. But that will have to wait. So, I will see you all soon. And as they would say, mischief managed.